lots of people. So even though I live in the third biggest city, it hasn't been any huge difference when it comes to for me, I'm working by myself. I've been in my own office for most of my life, and then just going out, not a big difference. A few people have covered themselves up, but otherwise, of course, you don't meet people. That's the thing. That has changed, but you are free to move as you like. You're free to go anywhere. Of course, pubs and things like this,
Same.
But otherwise, not a huge
problem. Sorry, everyone. I'm going to start the event.
Okay.
It is 7 o'clock, but do feel free to keep talking. I'm sure people are interested to know.
Oh, no, go on.
I just wanted to test the chat box.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we're now live and people are joining, which is great, which means we're all in the right place. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're just going to wait for the numbers to sort of tick up. We hope you all enjoyed the film. If you want, you can write in the chat box the favourite part of the film, just to let us know to start off with, or where you're from. And then as soon as, we've waited probably just 1 or 2 more minutes, we'll open the floor to questions. So you can ask questions using the chat box at the bottom of the screen. So you'll see a little icon that looks like a speech bubble, and you can click that and then you can type in your question, and you can choose where it goes, whether it goes to just the panelists or whether it goes to all panelists and attendees. So please do use the chat function to ask questions. Alternatively, you can also raise your hand, and that's the little hand button at the bottom of the screen. And you can click that, and then we'll ask you to unmute at a later stage. And then you can ask your question sort of as in person as we can get right now. So yeah, welcome everyone. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes. Perfect. Okay, and people are already commenting. So we've got a thank you for an eye-opening and wonderful film. Okay, I'm just gonna wait 1 more minute and then we will pass over to Tina to start the event. So thanks for joining. If you've been just joining us now and getting connected, I've already said, but we will be opening the floor to questions. So you can use the chat box below, and that's a little speech bubble at the bottom of your screens that looks like a sort of chat icon. So if you click that, you can type in your question, and you can send it to all panelists or all panelists and attendees. So sometimes it's nice to send it to everyone and sort of have a chat about it. Alternatively, you can raise your hand, that's the little hand icon at the bottom, and then we will come to you to ask your question in person, just at a later stage. So we've already got just a few comments coming in saying, that they enjoy the film, which is great. Okay, so I think now I'm going to pass over to Tina.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. We've had a lot of people watch the film and the comments are already looking fantastic. So from my role, I'm regional chair for the Royal Geographical Society, and Helena is our comms who deals with London, and Bruce is the person who's brought the talk to us this evening. So Bruce, would you like to make the introductions, please?
Thank you, Tina. It's my privilege to introduce Michael Strandberg, the Swedish explorer and documentary maker. Michael made the film we've all just watched. He wrote, photographed, starred with Johan, and directed the film. And as we know, it was all at minus 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the last 36 years, Michael has forged a professional career and ecological lifestyle as an explorer, expedition planner, and travel guide. He's published documentaries and books on a dozen grueling trips across 6 continents of planet Earth. During 5 of those trips, he carried the prestigious flag of the Explorers Club. So welcome, Michael, and welcome to this session. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel honored indeed to be here and honored to be introduced by my old mate, Bruce from Australia here. So I really look forward to your questions. You are free to ask pretty much whatever you like.
From Emily Cohen, what did the return journey involve? Did you get back via the sea? The film was fantastic.
Well, the return journey, it was such an extraordinary story, really, because the only way to get back was to get an airplane from a town called Chersky. And their way to handle an airfield during winter was using the ice. It was the only time they could actually take down a bigger plane. As we arrived a little bit too late, it turned out that the season was over for airplanes, which in our case would have meant that we would have been stuck there until the ice was strong enough next winter. Who knows, maybe 5-6 months. But this is the fantastic thing with Siberia, which made me fall in love with it. And when I came back from Siberia, it felt like life was over. It's the people. So what do people do to help me and Johan, when they knew we had to go back? They went out and scraped up a landing place so a plane could come down and pick us up, and other people too. So that's actually how we got out of it. So we flew from there to the capital of Yakutia, Yakutsk, and then Moscow and back home.
Okay, we've got another question here from Mary, and Mary recounts that her Polish father was a prisoner in one of the gulags in 1920, and she wants to know, will the film be available to watch, excuse me, to watch online or to download it, as she would like to show it to her family both in England and in Poland. But a specific question for you is, will you go back in the summer months?
The film, yes, can be seen. All you have to do basically is to go to either my homepage or my Facebook page. I think you guys left a link there. And then with the first things you see, it's the poster of the film. Just press that one and you have the link to the film. And you know it's free and you can spread this as much as you like. And yes, I've been back a few times since this trip, which took place 2004 and 5. And at this moment, me and my daughters, we are under expedition, you could say. We've cycled 1,600 kilometers together out of 11,000 that it takes to get to Katanga in northern Siberia, which is where we're heading for. And so we are cycling every single holiday that they have. So I think we'll make it into Russia if all goes well this summer with the pandemic and so on. Because the idea is from Katanga, I will ski eventually to the North Pole. So we are set to return to continue to film, and I want to introduce my daughters to this wonderful part of the world. They are only 8 and 10 years old, by the way.
And you can see the pictures of your daughters on your website as well, and and you've got your blog post as well, haven't you? The whole of Michael's website is very interactive, and it's easy to work your way around and see all the other things that he's doing and look at what actual awards he's won. Just in 2020, you've won rather a lot, haven't you?
Well, it started very well, you know, and the world premiere for my Greenland film was in Anadyr in Chukotka, which is one of the most isolated places on Earth. And it is as far as you can get in Siberia on the other side of the Alaska. And to introduce my Greenland film, because I lived there with my family for a year with the girls, it was just extraordinary. It was one of the highlights of my life. And award after award started moving in. And then, of course, the pandemic came and end of life for a while, but it's picking up again. So we'll see, you know. It could be worse.
Okay, Mike, we've got another question from Guy. And he asks, how much camera equipment did you take? And what advice do you have for new filmmakers?
Well, during this time when I did this film, basically the only thing you had were really big, heavy cameras. So we had one of those and it just couldn't break. And when it's this cold, so what happened, we had the batteries under our jackets just close to the skin, and then we had a cable out to the camera, but you could never, obviously you couldn't look at the LCD. I don't even think we had one. And you couldn't put your eye to the lens because if it was any liquid on it, it would freeze and stick to the camera. So you just basically had to figure out, this is probably what I am filming. So it wasn't easy. And when it was extremely cold, you had to sleep with all the technical equipment on you throughout the night. You didn't sleep anyway for that reason. That was the only way to take care of it. And when it comes to young filmmakers, just go out there and film, figure out an idea. You need an idea. That's the thing. So you need to know what kind of a story you want to tell. And most people, we do have a story, and it can be simple ones. So just get going. Don't think too much about it. Just start filming.
There's a question from Simon Kendall and another one from Andy, who talks about the families that you met and the people that you met along the way. Did you pre-plan that, or was it spontaneous? And also, what was your feeling as you left the families? What was it, optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the regions and its people?
No pre-planning, of course. That's basically an impossibility. When we were there, you had to get into one of the bigger towns to be able to even make a phone call. Russians are Russians, obviously. And another reason that I really enjoyed this area is no matter where you came, it could be a reindeer court. You move in, and the reindeer herders, who, when you look at them, looks very simple and crude, and they have a harsh life, but they knew poetry. They've read Pushkin, Dostoevsky. If you go out anywhere now in our part of the world and ask them if they've read Pushkin, they don't even know who he is. So generally, everyone we met were well-educated, culturally and intellectually. They impressed me a lot. So it was always a really good story. And Russians, whether indigenous or European Russians, they're all very good storytellers, and for some unknown reason, very good on camera, and they open their hearts immediately. So it's a easy people to do good film. But this is a long time ago, and I don't have any contact with these families that I met. But as I said, I've been back to Yakutsk, and I've done other trips with reindeer through Siberia, and I've learned a lot more. But this was a unique trip back then. And the situation was now, life has developed in, I don't know if it's a good or bad way, but it's different from back then. I'm happy I had a chance to be there then.
Okay, Stephen observes that if the guys are too macho to wear gloves working with ice, how come their skin doesn't stick to the ice and metal tools, or that they lose their fingers to frostbite?
Well, when it comes to local people in Siberia, they have like this part of the arm, the wrist here, they have like a reflex called the hunter's reflex, which basically means that the blood flows slower here, meaning they don't get frostbites. It's about 20% slower than for somebody like me who would turn up there and put his hand into water. That would not be a good idea. So they are kind of used to this. And one of my theories before leaving was that surely the reason that indigenous people look the way they look is because they're made to handle the cold. But it turns out it's all up here. It doesn't matter if you've got a long nose or you're thin or whatever. It's all in your head whether you can handle cold or not. And once we realized that, we relaxed and didn't really have a problem with the cold.
Christian was saying, wow, what a great movie. Can you elaborate a little more on how you plan your expeditions in general? And do you have any contact with the region? You've talked about that already. And what time was the best and which bits were the best? And he's Dutch living in Spain.
Wow, that was a long question.
Sorry.
No, that's as I said in the previous question, unfortunately, no contact with people that I came across during that time. And I lost that contact like 10 years ago. And when you choose a life like mine, life is a roller coaster. It goes up and down, one tragedy, one good thing, one tragedy, it goes on like that. So since I went there, it's just been rolling on. So how do I plan my trips? New ideas develop, of course, when you spend a lot of time, like on this trip skiing, that's how you develop an idea. This is what I would like to do the next time. So right now, this idea, my life is my daughter's now. So it's the best people I've ever, they're even better than the Siberians, actually. So I want to spend as much time as possible with them. So I'm taking them out everywhere on these trips. So we spent a year suffering in Greenland, ruining one part of the family. So I'm living here by myself now with my daughters and their mom. She lives in Greenland. So life is like this. An idea comes up, and now I have this one to cycle to Katanga and ski to the North Pole. And I'll cross the inland ice of Greenland next year for training. Something like that. So it's quite busy. Fantastic. Many ideas. You have to have that on. And the reason I've been able to stay in this kind of work is that I'm as curious as before. It just never ends. The curiosity that I really want to see and know more. So the pandemic, for me not being able to travel, well, it's turned me into ultra run. It's the only thing I can do. Run and run like that until they open up.
Thanks, Mike. Jean-Luc asks, did you find that there's a correlation between hardship, isolation, and hospitality, not only in Siberia, but in many of your other ventures?
Yes, definitely. And I do understand a sort of the motive behind that too, because I've been in a situation myself in life where I've hardly had anything, and the only way to survive is to be kinder, nicer, more generous than ever to other people and hope that they will return this kind of favor and love to you, and they do. So I understand the reason that it is like that. But having said that too, there's a lot of really nice people all over the world. There's no doubt about that. I think we are just quite, but that's humankind as well. We are kind of, generally, I would say we are quite stupid. We don't have the ability to see things in a bigger picture. So everything is kind of around our own lives, so we don't understand like during the pandemic now. Can you imagine living in poverty in Calcutta during this? That's tough. That's really hard. But still, we have all these serious problems with mental health during this and so on, which I find extraordinary, to tell you the truth. So I think we are just spoiled in this privileged part of the world. And obviously, I hope that the pandemic maybe might be of some help for us to understand this. I doubt it, but you can always hope. But I can say wherever, even when we cycled through Sweden, now my own country, we came, me and the girls, especially when I brought the girls, lots of nice people on route. And it's good for them because they think all people are like this, friendly and nice. So they get a very healthy, good perspective to traveling because everybody is nice to them. So my youngest girl, she came back the other day, a group of boys had paused her and said, "Hello there, depressed kid." And she came back and, you know, she was so sad. How can anybody say that? And then I realized, wow, I haven't prepared her for life ever. That's the level we are living in.
Mm-hmm. So when you're going around these places, Liz Wynne would like to know, what language did you speak and how do you and the girls interact with whoever you're meeting? What language do you use?
Well, if you're specifically thinking about Russia, you know, both you and me put a lot of effort into learning Russian. But you know, it never turned out to be any super successful story. So I always carried like 19 questions, which I asked, collected it on tape, and then we just had it translated when we got back home. With time, of course, we understood because the answers were more or less the same, so we had an idea what we were talking about. But also, when I got back, there were some answers which were I did not expect, which were even better. So wherever I go, you know, you need somebody who speaks the language. So the trip after Yemen, now after Siberia, I went to Yemen with a camel. You can see it here. Did a film there. So I had a friend with me who spoke Arabic. In Manchester, Moss Side, of course, no, not even the English understood what they said. Neither did I.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much how it is. And so you do as good you can, but now I always bring in people who can translate because obviously it's important for me to be able to communicate. All my journeys are about meeting people, communicating their thoughts and mine too. And you need to be a listener on journeys like this.
Like a further question from John. He asked, did you have any health problems on the trip? Given that, you know, you were shivering all night long, you couldn't stop for a break during the day. The environment was so harsh. You must have had times when you were worrying about the physical stamina required.
Well, I am a serious warrior when it comes to diseases because I've had a lot on my journeys. So I thought, you know, my big worry of the trip was to get a heart infection. I was so worried indeed, so I actually pressed like this. So it looked like when I took off the shirt after 2 months, like I've been run over by a truck. But what I have done in my own worry, I had pressed and pressed to make it like that. But no, we weren't really ill at all. And just to give you an idea, I've also done a film about Gulag survivors in Karaganda in Kazakhstan. And it turns out they had like 600 grams of bread only, and they worked, you know, 12 to 14 hours a day. Just to give you it's in the mind. Of obviously many died, but a lot of them didn't die. They survived these hardships until the day they were free, left it, and many of them just died weeks within being free because then they relaxed. Everything came out. So it took me, I would say, 5-6 months after getting back home to kind of recover. I was that tired because then I could relax. It was all over. But during the trip, disease is only in my mind.
Okay. You've met some fascinating people along in Siberia. Did people express a want to go to somewhere warmer and to move to a warmer country or warmer area?
Well, during the Soviet time, most people, you know, every 2, 3, 4 years had an opportunity. They were paid by the state to have a vacation at the Black Sea, for example. So many of them had felt some kind of you know, kind of beach heat. But then it should be said the summers here are 40, 45 degrees the other way Celsius. So it's extremely hot instead. That it's an area which is kind of tucked in between two big mountain chains. That's why you have this enormous contrast of weather. So they're used to heat. But when you ask people, you know, how can you live in this cold? And they say, we know nothing else. Simple answer.
How much awareness do the local residents have of the larger world outside their communities? Are they aware that there is so much different diversity in the world beyond the taiga? And as the previous question asked, do they want to leave that region for warmer climates?
Well, as I said earlier about Pushkin and Dostoevsky, pretty much everyone had a radio, and as you could see in the film, you know, they were trying to find some kind of frequency they could listen to, which meant that they were, and a lot of the radio during our time, that has changed. So it's a lot of rubbish nowadays, like it is in our part of the world. But back then it was, you know, kind of still a government radio. If you avoided all these political issues, but listen to everything else, you got well educated. So most of these people who lived by themselves, some had only met people on and off in a month, they could converse in extraordinary ways, and they could point out if I go to Moss Side and say that I'm Swedish, for example, very few would know where that is. If I would tell them, you know, I turn up at a reindeer herding camp in Russia and say that I was Swedish, they would say Olof Palme, our previous premier, or even they said Gunde Svan, who is a skier from my own village where I'm born, same age as me. And they knew a lot about Sweden, for example, and the outside. Well, of course, they had a lot of hypotheses. So, you know, when it comes to the perspective of politics and so on, since they've been fed a certain amount of that. But generally, the most educated people I've ever come across.
How do you think that climate change will affect these regions? In the Gulf Stream sinking, then maybe Scotland and Northern England will end up becoming taiga.
Well, exactly what is mentioned, that this is obviously is a fact that is happening, and the taiga is moving further north up on the tundra as well. And climate change, when we were there, you know, it was starting a little bit, but I don't even think I've heard the name climate change at that time. And then it just exploded. And of course, as it is in this part of the world now, since I'm looking into the North Pole, there's dramatic changes. So the permafrost, you know, is melting, which is serious issues. And the ice is getting smaller and smaller, leaving open water between the ice and land. And that, you know, even in winter. So there is changes, absolutely. And we will see it mainly in the biggest country of the world. It's just huge.
It was interesting to look at what Nims was saying, who's the team who climbed up K2 and he did those 14 mountains, and talking about Everest Base Camp. And now they're having to actually carry water, whereas they could melt snow. So it's happening all over the world from that point of view.
Not in Moss Side. It's been exactly the same for 100 years.
No, very different Moss Side. It used to be a very affluent and interesting area. Now it's got the best Caribbean fruit and veg and
True.
that sort of range.
I agree there.
It's superb. Have you ever felt anxiety or had a personal feeling towards, towards the spiritual beliefs of people on your travels?
I've come across a lot of things which are hard to explain. One of my latest trips, when I had the girls with me too, what I can say, when you live like on this trip by yourself out there in this extraordinary big nature, there's something all the time which makes you confused or make you question things, or you feel scared or you feel happy. It's a lot of very deep emotions there. You know, when you live with indigenous people who are actually living out there all the time, they have a lot of spiritual beliefs, good and bad. Of course, I come from a very rational country, and it's really hard to get rid of and that's part of my work as well, to question everything. So I never, you know, people have religion, and that's very good for me, you know, as long as it's dealt in a good way. And when it comes to the same, when it comes to spiritual behavior, if people feel good with it, that's excellent. It's nothing which has affected me though. Only love for my daughters.
Tina, I think that's it from my point of view.
I think we've, where did you get your best cup of tea? From Mark Pawlak, asking from England.
That's a very good question. I would say, I will tell you a good story about tea. So when I moved to Moss Side, I discovered this Yorkshire tea. and
How dare you, in Manchester?
It was so good, you know. And then there was a film club in Wales who showed my film Man with a Pram and Man with a Camel at some festival. And they made a bit of money. So he asked me, can I send you, I think it was 50 or 60 pounds. No. I said, send me, buy Yorkshire tea for all that and send it to Greenland. I think, as a joke, what turns up a huge packet of tea. So, but we finished it off in a year. It was, and it did its job there, because it was, you know, it was so cold and crudely raw. So, yeah, that's Yorkshire tea. I miss it. So every cup of Yorkshire tea is the best.
Okay, good. There's another one from Amanda, and then this must be the last question because it's now 7:30. Probably got a lot of other things to do, but you witnessed and experienced some incredible survival skills. Did you see any decorative and practices being continued too?
Some.
Mike, I think the question is relating to creative arts or to sort of cultural emblems.
No, I did not see a lot of that, no. That's my answer on that question.
There were some carvings in one of the seams with the shamans, and it looked like a graveyard, and they were keeping the elk's antlers. Was that for religious purposes or artistic?
Bragging purposes.
Oh, okay.
If you saw the size of that, I have never ever seen a moose as big as that. That's just extraordinary. Oh yes, I don't think I understood the question properly. Now I do. All local indigenous tribes, the Yakut are not indigenous, I want to say that, but all the others and the Yakut, there's a lot of totem pole, a lot of these things, yes, which deals with spirits and horses. it's huge there. And after the fall of the Soviet, you know, it's just exploded with Yakut nationalists, for example, and the past. There are a lot of people claiming to be shamans over there. I met one, which I possibly could believe is, but the rest, not really.
Michael, thank you so much for your talk this evening.
Send me Yorkshire tea.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll send you Yorkshire tea. But I'd really like to leave it to Bruce to say thank you, because you two have known each other for a long time. And Bruce, would you like to just give a little bit of a flavour as to how you know Michael, and the relationship and how we've come to be here together?
Oh, that might be the end of our friendship, actually, because we've probably got different... I was a middle-aged budget traveller in the middle of Bolivia 40 years ago, and I ran into this young kid who was living off an oily rag because he was a backpacker. And unfortunately, Mike was a very, very fit bodybuilder in Sweden, came to South America and got dysentery so bad he lost a lot of weight. And I met him on the train crossing Bolivia, and we were the only gringos on the train. So we became mates, and we travelled on through southern Brazil to Sao Paulo and up to Rio, stayed there for a week or so, and then he flew back to Sweden to recuperate. And so we've touched base from time to time over the years. The next time I saw him, he rode his bicycle from Auckland in New Zealand to Cairo, and he turned up in my backyard in Melbourne. So we have been able to see each other from time to time. And it was wonderful seeing you tonight, mate. And thank you so much for ranting with the good.
My pleasure. Good to see you again, Bruce, and hope to see you over here one day soon.
We'll do after the epidemic.
And bring the Yorkshire tea. That's up to Tina now to see that you bring it.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I'll make sure. I know the family that make Yorkshire tea too. So yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for a brilliant evening. And thank you to everybody who's stayed for all the questions. And Michael, thank you. It's been a brilliant evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All
Bye.
the best to you others too.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and have a good evening. And Michael, thank you so much. It was such a wonderful event. So we're, had such a special evening with you. So thank you for that.
You say that to everyone.
No, but she means it, Mike.
I do mean it, though.
Yeah.
It's so lovely to be sat in my flat.
She's a geographer.
Watching a film that takes me somewhere else. Honestly, it's really, really lovely to have something else to think about. So I think a lot of people would echo that. So thank you a lot.
There's been some amazing comments. It's just super. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, have a good evening,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.